Directed by Peter Berg and based on Marcus Luttrell's memoir recounting the events of Operation Red Wings, one of the most infamous incidents surrounding Navy SEALs, Lone Survivor is a movie known for three things. First of all, the central shootout is technically very impressive, and while being historically questionable, it depicts tactical decision-making brilliantly. Secondly, the movie is known for starring Dan Bilzerian in a minor role. The world-famous self-proclaimed alpha male who failed SEAL training not once but twice loaned the production $1 million in exchange for 8 minutes of screen time to fulfill his childhood dream of becoming a Navy SEAL. He later sued the production because his screen time was cut down to under a minute.
That's crazy.
Well,
the third thing this movie is infamous for is rewriting history. Operation Red Wings was a tragedy. There's no discussion there, but the way the tragedy occurred in real life is much different from what we see in the movie. Lone Survivor might be one of the most brutal and technically impressive modern war films ever made, but it's also one of the most debated. In this video, we're jumping into the reality of it all. Not just the firearms, but the reality of the everyday life of team guys. And of course, the depiction of the events of those fateful days. This movie contrasts authenticity and inauthenticity a lot, as some things, especially in the opening half of the movie, are crazy accurate. The movie itself starts with a montage of buds. This is raw footage from a Discovery documentary, and the guys we see are not actors. They are real candidates, some of whom became SEALs. Also, the dorms are spot on. Not only do they look exactly the way rooms look on deployment, but the pics of other team guys you see on the walls are actual team photos. A lot of military personnel appear as extras in background roles to make the movie more realistic, and the 4 leads underwent training conducted by actual SEALs. According to Mark Simos, one of the on-set military advisors, they went through 30,000 rounds of 5.56 during training. Aside from grueling physical and firearms training, this also included a simulation of the shootout in which the SEALs played the Taliban. Taylor Kitsch was apparently the most combat adept out of all actors. Something that will also earn realism points are the loadouts. Lieutenant Michael Murphy and Petty Officer 2nd Class Daniel Dietz both carry the M4A1 carbine, which are the actual guns they used for Operation Red Wings. In the movie, we see them fitted with ACOG scopes, mini reflex sights, and M203 grenade launchers, which are all historically accurate. In fact, in the battle's aftermath, Shaw and his group recovered M4 carbines, a sniper rifle, their NVGs, as well as the laptop the team carried, which included detailed maps of the US and British embassies in Kabul. Marcus Luttrell and Petty Officer 2nd Class Matthew Axelson used the Mark 12 Mod 1 Special Purpose Rifle. Their guns are basically identical as they're both fitted with suppressors, bipods, and IR designators, but Axe's SPR also has a mini reflex sight and a SOP mod collapsible stock, while Luttrell's rifle has a fixed stock. The Mark 12 was phased out of service in 2017, but several clones for the civilian market are still produced. Axe is the only operator who uses his sidearm in the movie, and he uses a Beretted 92 FS. On the other side, the Taliban are seen using the AK-47s and their variants, a PKM, and RPG-7s. This is also entirely accurate and in accordance with the official mission report, although there are some claims that RKMs were used, not PKMs, but that's neither here nor there. There's only one real mistake surrounding the gear, and that's the use of helmets or lack thereof. Now, it's common for SEALs and other SOFs to opt not to carry helmets at all, especially on recon missions if they're not expecting any fire exchange. Helmets are, after all, clunky and heavy. They restrict your movement and your vision a bit, and if you hang one on your pack, it's going to make noise as you move. However, we see that all of them have their helmets during infill, but they never put them on even though they know they're in for a fight. Movie directors generally don't like helmets because they obscure the faces of actors, but it's highly unlikely that any combatant would choose not to wear a helmet if he knew he was about to be shot at. We won't be deducting points for this because we don't know if it's perhaps what actually happened, but bringing your helmet with you and then refusing to put it on when the shooting starts is unrealistic. Aside from that, the gear and loadout realism is spot on, and it's actually one of the most accurate modern loadouts ever put to screen, comparable to Black Hawk Down. Something that's also very accurate is the tactical depiction of the battle that ensued that day. For clarity, we're now just talking about tactical realism, not historical. We'll save that for later. Before the fight even starts, as the team gets into position and starts recon, we see Axe collecting intel and making a little sketch of the village before him. This is a great little detail as it's a common practice with recon teams. He's collecting intel on the rough size, shape, and activities, and the sketch is something he can submit with his report later on. That is, if he had survived. One of the on-set SEALs most definitely suggested this be added, and it's a great bit of realism. As they were getting to their OP, the team was regularly in contact with HQ, telling the names of the predetermined waypoints as they were passing them.
Apollo 22, Spartan 01 is Miller. Apollo 22, Spartan 01 is Corona.
Say again your last?
Spartan 01 is Heineken. Copy.
Good copy.
This is once again right on the money regarding tactical realism because that's how it's done in real life. The reason units use things like beer names, car brands, colors, or something else instead of saying their actual location is to confuse the enemy in case they're listening in. On that day, it took the Taliban about an hour to kill 3 out of 4 team members, and they did it by never letting them achieve fire superiority and constantly pushing them back. In the movie, the team manages to hold the line for only a short while, after which they start retreating, which is both historically and tactically accurate. What's depicted really well here is, for one, that no one moves without someone else shooting, which is the result of the intense boot camp. Secondly, the camera work emphasizes the chaos and disorientation really well, because at certain points you're not sure who is where. Beyond that, something we see here that absolutely deserves commendation is the communication between the frogmen. Unlike with most war movies, where seemingly everyone knows what to do without the commander actually telling them, we actually see Murphy dictating their moves. More importantly, we actually see him get feedback from the other 3 men and then make decisions based on that feedback. The best example of that is this scene.
Mikey, left is good. I say again, left is good. Left is not good. I say again. Left is not good.
Roger that. Push right.
Then, based on the fact that they failed to push left, right, or repel the attack, Murphy makes the decision to quite literally jump down a mountain as that's the only move they have left. This, by the way, actually happened. It's one of the things that wasn't exaggerated, and the fact none of them broke their necks during the slide down is downright insane. We also get this incredibly well-depicted moment of sheer shock from Danny that's beautifully acted.
Hey, I know you're good. I know you're good. Mikey, how they getting so fat?
It may not seem like much at first glance, but it's a great way of communicating to the audience as to just how banged up the frogmen are at this point, with even the most well-trained men on the face of the earth foregoing the rule of silence because of shock. Then, after the second jump, Murph quickly gets to the bottom line. They're not outflanking the Taliban, and they're certainly not running away. The only way anyone gets out alive is if they get reinforced, so he makes the decision to call in a quick response force. In order to do that, he has to climb out to a clearing and expose himself to enemy fire and essentially sacrifice himself. Once again, the way the decision-making process is communicated to the audience is perfect.
I don't think we can get him from here. We ain't out flanking him, Mikey. We gotta find another way.
I'm gonna make the call to kill her.
You ain't making no comms with that sat phone, Mikey.
Lone Survivor definitely deserves plaudits for tactical accuracy. All the guns and gear are right, and the logic behind everything the team does is, first of all, presented very clearly to the audience, and even more importantly, we actually see the communication between team members. Where the movie doesn't get it right is in historical accuracy on what actually happened during Operation Red Wings. This movie was written by Peter Berg and Marcus Luttrell and is based on Luttrell's book called Lone Survivor, the eyewitness account of Operation Red Wing and the lost heroes of SEAL Team 10. The book was actually written by British military fiction writer Patrick Robinson, but Luttrell's name is on the cover. It's incredibly important to point out that the Navy essentially brokered this deal and had paid Robinson to write a few other SEAL novels before. Let's start on a positive note and talk about the things the movie absolutely gets right. The setting, the names of the operators, the constantly failing comms, and when you draw the line, the number of KIAs. All of that is historically factual. The things that are fabricated are not all Marcus Luttrell's fault. A lot of people seem to indiscriminately point their fingers at Luttrell, but Berg actually changed a lot of things from the book. The thing that's most definitely inconsistent in Luttrell's story is the number of Taliban that ambushed the team. In his after-action report, he estimated that there were between 20 and 35 fighters. In the book and in some interviews after the book's publication, he claimed that between 80 and 200 fighters were in the area, but the intelligence reports and post-action reports estimate no more than 8 to 10 fighters. There were simply not enough casings on the ground after the fight to warrant a large enemy force. One Marine has even stated that there were fewer than 35 people, including women and children, living in that area, so such a large force would be impossible. Additionally, we saw the full 20-minute Taliban footage of this fight while writing this video. We're not going to show it here for legal reasons, but it's available on Reddit if you dig deep enough. The footage is gruesome. It shows the fight, the dead body of Danny Dietz, the weapons and gear they got from the fallen SEALs, and it even shows the Taliban playing with Danny's ID. What it does not show is too many combatants, which is in line with intel and post-action investigation. There's a huge discrepancy between Luttrell's estimation and actual intel regarding the number of fighters, and this is why a lot of people are accusing Luttrell of lying in order to save face. However, we have to account for the fact that the SEALs were ambushed under a lot of adrenaline and jumped down a mountain twice. In those circumstances, when you're being pushed back and you're fighting for your life, a 10-man force can seem like a 100-man force. In this regard, it's most likely that Luttrell's estimation is untrue, but that doesn't make it dishonest. The only other instance in which Luttrell finds himself at the center of historical inaccuracy is with the vote. In his book, he wrote that the team took a vote on whether to kill the goat herders who found them or let them go, and this also happens in the movie. This has been widely disputed by everyone, including Murphy's father, who said his son would never even consider killing 2 unarmed men and a child, while Navy Special Warfare Command spokesperson Lieutenant Steve Ruh also said that Murphy, as the commander, would have ultimate authority. Aside from the number of combatants and the infamous vote, most of the other inaccuracies weren't fabricated by Luttrell in his book. They were instead created for the movie and go against what Luttrell wrote in the novel. For example, Luttrell dies and is revived in the movie. This never happened, nor did Luttrell say it happened. Luttrell also never claimed to have pulled out shrapnel or bullets from his leg, which he does in the movie. He also wasn't almost killed by Shah. While Shah did come looking for him in the village and eventually found him, the villagers took up arms and drove Shah and his gang out before he could even pull a gun or a machete on Marcus. The attempted beheading never happened, nor did Luttrell claim it happened. The final battle in the village also never happened. The Taliban never opened fire on the village, neither Gulab, the man who found Luttrell, nor Marcus were attacked, and Luttrell didn't stab a Taliban with a knife. Luttrell actually explained this in his book, saying that the Taliban would never kill another 100 Afghan people, including women and children, in order to get him, because they didn't want to turn the villagers against them even more. At that moment in time, the locals were friendly to Americans because of humanitarian missions, and the Talis didn't want to antagonize them any further. Shah himself was just a local Afghani insurgent leader, not a high-level Al-Qaeda operative, as he's described in the movie. Also, the Taliban didn't find them because of some goat herders. They were tracking them as soon as the team landed. This was confirmed by the Talis themselves. They heard the helicopter, the team left the rope on the ground, and the Talis tracked their footsteps. It's possible the ambush was established before the goat herders bumped into the team, and when they let the herders go, the Taliban opened fire. The team did not know they were about to be ambushed like they do in the movie. They were completely taken by surprise, which explains why they lost against such a small force. Another thing this movie doesn't tell us is that this mission was effectively snatched from the Marines, who were supposed to conduct it originally. The Marines approached the Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force to provide them with low illumination assault support capability of the 160th SOAR, and instead of getting that, the siege of SOTIF forced them to move aside and let SOCOM take the first phases of the mission. Upon learning that it'll be taken by the SEALs, the Marines, who were already done with pre-op planning, suggested that they infill on foot without helicopters, bring a different radio, and bring a saw. The SEALs did none of those things, and that eventually led to the tragedy that happened that day. Even if we look past all those historical faults, some of which are really bad because they outright lie to the viewer and fail to provide crucial context, there's still one glaring lie this movie tells us. The SEALs most likely never killed a single Taliban combatant. The villagers from the village that sheltered Luttrell, including Mohammed Gulab himself, searched the hills after the fight and they did not find a single Taliban corpse. Former Marine Colonel Andrew McManus, who helped plan the mission and was there for the recovery operation, said that there were no local reports of enemy casualties. This means that the SEALs didn't put up much of a fight, and this led us to the biggest lie of the entire movie: the fight itself. In real life, Luttrell was found with all 11 of his magazines intact. He did not fire a single round. Luttrell himself said that his legs went numb as the ambush started because of shrapnel and he had to crawl to pull back. He was taken out of the fight as soon as it started. It's likely that as the team pulled back, Luttrell hid under a rock and waited for them to leave without ever opening fire. Aside from just talking about the mistakes and inaccuracies, let's think for a moment about why the filmmakers made these choices in the first place. Surely Peter Berg knew that half the things he wrote into the story never happened, so there has to be some logic behind it, right? Well, for one, the movie is clearly intended to show how the team felt, and as we said earlier, the depiction of shock and despair is truly incredible. To accomplish that though, they had to go over the line with some things. The second reason behind this movie's choices lies in the background. The Department of Defense provided equipment and advisors for the production. However, if you're making a war movie and you want the DoD to work with you, they generally won't let you paint the Army in a bad light. In fact, the DoD requested a lot of changes to the script according to SpyCulture.com, and according to them, the DoD knowingly contradicted Luttrell's story, eyewitness accounts, and the reports from military officials. The DoD is, in this regard, responsible for the public image of Navy SEALs, and one of the notes for the script states that while maximizing historical authenticity is our mandate, we share responsibility for the reputations of the 4 SEALs and to their families' memories of them. This basically means that they can't allow people to think that elite operators can get killed by less than a dozen untrained Taliban. We also have to keep in mind that the DoD's goal with every war movie they take part in is to attract potential military personnel. Their goal is not to deter people from joining the military, and no one will want to become a SEAL if they have to sit through a 2-hour movie about Luttrell hiding under a rock. The Army's Entertainment Liaison Office described this movie by saying that audiences going to see the film will voluntarily sit through a 2-hour infomercial about the participation of Army Special Forces in one of our many joint missions. And that pretty much tells you everything you need to know. This is something that we go in much deeper on our extended cut video, available for our Patreon subscribers, but Hollywood has a real SEAL syndrome, and it's not necessarily good. The events of Operation Red Wings needs to be flipped on its head in order to portray the SEALs in a positive light, even when they lost the fight. It's not in the DoD's interest for young, potential SEALs to know what a glorious screw-up that operation was, and to learn that SEALs are, in fact, not demigods, and that they can be beaten by poorly trained but well-organized fighters. With all that being said, the movie did hit close to home with many veterans and military families, resonating with many. Although a lot of veterans criticized the historical inaccuracy, when we look past that, we can see that this over-stylized movie still fills a certain niche for lovers of military cinema. Just as a movie, it's dynamic and thrilling, the shootouts are fantastically choreographed and well-made, and the practical effects and stunts have to be commended as well. With all of this in mind, we have to ask a question at the end of the video. What's more important, the truth, which we certainly don't get in this movie, or feeling what the characters, who are real people in this case, are going through? Should Hollywood be held to high standards of historical accuracy or emotional accuracy? You can like this film and still acknowledge that it's blurring history. There's nothing wrong with that. We, however, try to be somewhat objective here at Shooting Blank, so we'll give it a 4 out of 10 for historical accuracy. There are just way too many things in this allegedly historic movie that outright didn't happen or happened differently, including some pretty big stuff like the number of combatants and KIAs. It's still not on the level of Enemy at the Gates, but it's close. There's just too much history rewriting to ignore. When it comes to gear and firearms, it's 10 out of 10. That's one good thing about working with the DoD. Not only will they supply you with equipment, but their advisors will also make sure that the actors are using the right guns and the right fits. What did you think of Lone Survivor? Was the thrill and the intensity enough for you to ignore the historical inaccuracies, or did it completely break immersion? And what's your favorite moment of the movie? Let us know in the comments below, and as per usual, make sure to like and subscribe.